You're listening to a proud member of the FightFans Radio Network.
What's going on, everybody? Brand new episode, FanAddicts MMA show. I'm your host, Erica Lewis. Today is Friday, July the 27th, 2012. Trying to make sure we get the date in there every time. All right, we got a great episode, I think, planned for us today. I am, of course, joined by my co-hosts, which would be Justin Cohee and David Wolf. Guys, what's going on? How's it going?
What's good, Erica?
I'm sitting in a car, sweating my ass off.
Oh.
Do you have air conditioning?
Yeah, I do, but it's like black leather interior, so there's nothing that helps that.
Oh, rub it in. Why don't you? I've got black leather.
That's what she said.
Oh, I wish. Okay, that was a little bit much. All right.
Let me know if the background noise gets to be too much. Just let me know, and then I'll try and pick up my phone. Otherwise, I'll dip out. But if you guys can deal with a little background noise, and I sound okay, I'll stay on. Okay,
good deal. Sounds good. Yeah, I think we'll be all right. Let me make sure that our sound is good.
I don't want to alienate or discourage all 13 of our listeners.
Exactly. Up 12. Look at that. We just lost. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, as usual, you can tweet us during the show at FanAddicts MMA or at FightFans Radio. You can also call us. The number is 410-988-6525. If you would like to share your thoughts on anything we're talking about. Speaking of what we're going to be talking about today, we have to talk about, of course, UFC 149. I was posting stuff like this during the fights, but I really would say, in recent memory, I would say that it was the worst pay-per-view I've seen in recent memory.
Well,
I think that's been pretty much the general consensus, is that it was just straight up horrible.
See, I only caught from where the end of the Chuck Congo fight. It seemed like he might have been giving birth in the ring, and I saw the next two fights. And wow, Hector Lombard against Tim Boesch was horrific. I mean, that was just a boring fight. And Faber against Renan Barão wasn't a bad fight, but it wasn't a good fight.
No, and on a card where the rest of the fights would have gone the way that they should have gone, or at least with the way that people thought they should have gone, I think Barão and Faber would not have been quite as mediocre. I think because
it wasn't bad.
It wasn't a bad fight, but it wasn't a good fight.
Tim Boesch and Hector Lombard stinking up the place, and apparently Chuck Congo did too, and the fight before that. And Riddle is set to have a good fight, and I thought the prelims were really good, because I did catch the prelims. Then I did not order the pay-per-view, and then I through alternative means watched the last two fights.
Through alternative means.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm willing. I just could not justify paying for this card, and I think in retrospect that was absolutely correct. And I know, I think especially Dave Meltzer was saying, people shouting refund and being upset. It's like, it's a live sporting event. These type of things happen. But I think UFC has to take some of the blame based on the oversaturation and the inability to fill these cards. Like if you could have had you could have cards that really have star power, and they're not going to go wrong. You know, you have like Rashad Evans and Rampage Jackson. They don't even have that great a fight, but it still delivers because it has people, you know, people who are stars more than Uriah Faber and Renan Barão. You know, people really don't know who it is. So if you have a situation where Renan Barão, Uriah Faber headlining a show where you don't have any fights on the main card that are the fights as originally booked, and then the show doesn't deliver in any fashion, you know, except a mediocre main event and I guess a good opening fight. That's on the company. That's on the company when they're doing when they're going to have 32 shows in a year, which averages a show every other week.
Yeah, and the part that was frustrating for me as a fan, I was watching the post-fight presser, and Dana White, as upset as he was, whenever someone, one of the media members would ask him about the oversaturation, he would get pissed and say, you know, people like to watch fights. We're delivering fights. You're delivering shitty fights. And I actually got into a little, shall we say, confrontation on Twitter, because apparently that's what I do now. I never used to do that, but now apparently that's what I do. So if you're looking for a really interesting argument, be sure to friend me on Twitter, or to follow me on Twitter at FightFan_Erica, because apparently that's what I do. And some dude was trying to say that the oversaturation is not a problem for the UFC, and that's not why we had bad fights. And I'm like, you're an absolute moron if you think that having you know, sometimes at the very minimum 2 pay-per-views and at least 2 live cards a month isn't hurting the UFC's product itself. You're an idiot. You're an absolute idiot, because it is. It clearly is. I mean, we're watching it before our very eyes.
And this card on paper wasn't even very attractive. So, you know, right there, that's oversaturation. Why can't you fill out a 5-card pay-per-view with 5 intriguing fights? You should be able to do that. They were able to do that a few years ago. A few years ago, I did not. I'm sorry, Justin.
What I was going to say is, as big as an MMA fan that I am, and you know, doing the show, so I want to know as much as what's going on as I can. But sometimes, like with cards like last weekend's, I skipped because you know, I decided, you know what, I don't feel like watching this card. I'm going to do something else. And you know, generally, if I missed it used to be like last summer, I missed like 2 or 3 cards just because of travel obligations. But this summer I haven't watched like 2 or 3, and I don't feel bad about it, just because, like you said, when they're doing so many cards, the quality dips. And as a fan, I used to be, when there was like maybe 1 to 2 shows a month, and sometimes it was just 1 a month, you know, you would get excited, get hyped for the card coming up, because you know, there was that desire to see something that you hadn't seen in a while. Now I feel like every time I turn on FX or Fuel, there's a new card on, there's an announcement for another card, there's a pay-per-view that's wrought with injuries that should be canceled or moved, and they let it go on, and it's just a mess.
It says something when the 2 of us essentially skipped this card.
And the only reason I watched it was because a buddy of mine, he works with me at Fight Metric. He ended up with a free code on UFC.tv to watch it. Even though I swore I would never use UFC.tv, I'll take their money for free. So that's pretty much what I did. And it was awful. I mean, even for something that we watched absolutely free, I wanted my money back. Like, my time is my money.
That's what I wrote, basically.
Yeah.
I didn't pay for this, but I still want a refund.
I still want a refund for this. This was an awful waste of time, and you know, and I'm sure everybody's heard all about this card. The preliminary card was amazing. The FX card and the Facebook fights were really, really good. Just absolutely amazing. You know, Brian Caraway this on the FX card. Brian Caraway came back from you know what? No, let me back that up. Even on the Facebook fights, I don't know if either one of you watched the Facebook fights. Did you watch the Facebook fights at all, guys?
I didn't see the Facebook. I know they showed some on the FX, but I didn't see them on the FX.
So Anton, I think it's Kuvanin versus Mitch Clark was a really great fight. I mean, it was just back and forth. There was a lot of grappling. It was really, really exciting. Antonio Carvalho, he beat Daniel Pineda via KO in the first round. Pineda, to be fair, did come in as a late replacement. But Carvalho looked really good. He looked really, just really in there, ready to fight. He took no damage whatsoever in that fight. He just looked really great on the feet, and it showed when he knocked out Pineda, who is still a tough guy, whether he's coming in on late notice or not. Brian Caraway, as usual, getting his ass whooped through the first 2 rounds of this fight against Mitch Gannon, and manages to out-grapple him in the 3rd round. Gannon, I don't know if you saw Gannon, he's a huge dude. Like, this is a big, muscular dude, and it showed. He got really tired, and Caraway was able to take advantage of that in the 3rd round. It was able to, I believe he took him down, and then he was able to sink in the rear naked choke after kind of fighting with him for a while. Let's talk about Ryan Jimmo. Was that not an amazing, just an amazing debut for somebody? I mean, to really come in and have that kind of showing for a guy who a lot of people thought was a boring fighter. I mean, he's had some really horrible snooze fests when he was the light heavyweight champion of Maximum Fighting Championship. So for him to make his debut in the UFC and for it to be that impressive, it was not, though. Let me repeat this, was not the fastest knockout in UFC history. They keep trying to say it is. It's not. The guy that I was watching it with, he is actually part of Fight Matrix full-time team. It's his job to look at the statistics. And the UFC, after the campaign to have why am I forgetting his name?
Ludwig.
Yes, to have Ludwig have the fastest KO in UFC history, they changed it to 6 seconds. It was like 6.23 seconds or something like that. So even though Ryan Jimmo's was fast, it's definitely up there, probably top 3, top 5. It is not the fastest KO in UFC history. It sounds like a great story to have for the pay-per-view for a guy who wasn't able to make his original debut due to injury, and it's his debut fight, and it's in it's in Canada where he's from. That's great, but it is not the fastest KO in UFC history. So there.
Still a hell of a knockout. Not only was it like in 7 seconds, but it was picture perfect.
It was.
Like,
it was.
And it was like he knew that. Crap! I don't know what I'm doing. Sorry, I'm driving and I don't know where I am.
Please don't get kidnapped.
He knew that Feroz held his hand that way, and he knew he'd be perfectly set up for an overhand right, and it was just. It was
perfect.
Yeah. It was one of the best overhand rights I've ever seen.
It was fairly. It was awe-inspiring. But let me tell you what the best part of that performance was, and that was Ryan Jimmo's robot following his win. That is the most awesome robot that ever did robot. And one of the reasons that I like Ryan Jimmo, and I talk about this all the time, is that I think he was an extra on Step Up 3, if I'm not mistaken. It was one of the Step Up movies that he was like a dance extra. And you can tell that he's not just some guy who's doing the robot for fun. You can tell that he's got like actual technique to it, and really impressed with his dance moves following it. Dave is laughing at me. I just love that. I think that's awesome. I hope that becomes his absolute thing. I hope he takes it to the next step. I hope he starts like top rocking after he wins, maybe a couple of spins. I don't care what he does, man. That was awesome. That was a really great fight. But and I know this wasn't a main card fight, but considering how boring the main card was, Justin, and I don't even know if you even made any considerations for this, but where would you like to see Ryan Jimmo to go next? I mean, with such an impressive debut, it's almost it's a two-edged sword, isn't it? It's, you did so well in your debut, so you're going to be expected to do just as well in the rest of your fights. So are expectations too high for Ryan Jimmo at this point? And where would you like to see him go next?
Yeah. a debut like that, while impressive, and I'm sure that yeah, he's got to be happy with it because he's walking away injury-free and could probably take a fight again fairly soon. You know, I guess some people are going to be so impressed by that they'll be like, oh yeah, go ahead and throw him in with you know, someone who's in the top 10. But again, my school of thought is, you know, get these guys some experience in the octagon, because no matter how much experience they get in the regional scene, Brad Jew's been fighting a long time. It doesn't really, I don't know if it really prepares you for, you know, that sort of setting that the octagon sets forth. So Fabio Maldonado's got a fight coming up. If he wins that fight, I think that's a good fight for Jimmo. I
like that, you know, and I think a lot of people, I mean, we're all painfully aware of how of just how thin the top of the 205 division is right now. I mean, John Jones has managed to pretty much beat the piss out of everybody they put in front of him. So it's I can see the UFC having a hard time figuring out who's going to face him next. And Jimmo having that kind of performance, I'm sure makes them excited about the prospect of putting him up there. But he is not ready. He's not even close to being ready for that, despite being a champion, despite being I think he defended his belt 3 times in MFC, so it's not like he just won the title and they brought him over to the UFC. Like, he actually defended it a few times. But, you know, despite being a defending champion in another organization and having such an impressive debut, he needs to fight better competition than he was in MFC. And I agree with you. I like that. I like Maldonado. I think that's a good matchup for him. And they both like to throw, and I think it would be a really exciting fight. Also on the preliminary card, was really impressed with Francisco Rivera. He looked
awesome.
He was making his return to the UFC. Oh wow, Terrence from Southeast is tweeting me something, and I'm going to touch base on that real quick here, Terrence. I promise I'm going to talk a little bit about that because we absolutely have to. But Francisco Rivera looked good, and Roland Delorme. He is a tough guy. I mean, he did come from the Ultimate Fighter, but he's no bitch. Like, Roland Delorme is no bitch. He's done really well since he came on to the UFC. He's shown some really good grappling, and Francisco Rivera showed great takedown defense. Although I wouldn't say Delorme was getting hit so hard at points. I think that his takedowns were just desperate attempts to not get punched in the face. But Francisco looked excellent. Great footwork. He was kicking hard. He was hitting hard. It was picturesque. Wouldn't you say it was picturesque, David? Like, watching him be able to slip the punches that Roland Delorme was throwing, and it seemed like he was so timed on his part when he was going to counter anything Delorme threw at him.
It put the art in martial arts, for sure.
Yeah.
Very. I was so impressed.
Absolutely.
More so than the 7-second knockout.
Yeah, well, there's only so much you could take from a short knockout. Exactly. I'm trying to think who I was I talking to somebody? Was I listening to something? My days are starting to run together. I've been sick the last couple of days, so things are running together in my head. But I did see or read or... no, it was on yesterday's Untethered. That's what it was. Haha. Look, Erica figured it out. Where they were talking about... Cain Velasquez versus Junior Dos Santos, and for a brief moment, I'm trying to remember how they even got to that, but they talked about it for a brief moment, and they said what I said. Must have been
related to Dark Knight.
It possibly was. That was the best part, is that they spent a good 45 minutes of that show talking about the Dark Knight. It was absolutely amazing. And I fell in love with those guys, because they were like, if you didn't like the Dark Knight, then I don't like you. And that's
that was the essence of it all.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel. Like, if we're friends right now,
it was good talk.
If we're friends right now and we're not, we haven't been friends for more than 5 years, and you don't like the Dark Knight Rises, we can't be friends. So, I don't. Somebody is tweeting some weird stuff over to hear me right now. Okay, but. Francisco Rivera looked really good. Justin, are you there? I know we lost you there for a second. Are you there?
Yeah, that was my fault. My
bad. So Rivera looked really good in his fight against Delorme. Where would you like to see him go next? I mean, This was him coming back to the UFC. I was just about to look that up because I believe he was released by the UFC, and then this was his first fight back, wasn't it?
I believe so. Again, I missed the card, so I'm kind of bummed that I didn't get to see. Like you get to hear you two get excited about the performance, makes me bummed out that I didn't get to see it. And because I didn't see the card, I really didn't put a whole lot of thought into the preliminaries. I think both of those guys, especially someone who's just been welcomed back to the UFC, and the first fight that he's getting is an Ultimate Fighter alum. Maybe you give him another Ultimate Fighter alum, or you give him a newcomer.
Okay, I like that.
You've already cut him once. Why give him another tough fight just to have him lose and come again? That kind of defeats the purpose of bringing it back.
Right, and help the man build his confidence. I mean, there's something to be said about allowing fighters that show promise to build their confidence, so that when you're struggling to make stars, when you're struggling to make number one contenders, there's something to be said about bringing up a guy slowly, giving him fights that are you never want to give him squash matches. You don't want to give him fights that he's quote unquote supposed to win, but giving him competitive fights, not fights that are way too heavily one way or the other. And that's what they need to do with Francisco Rivera, because I really was impressed with that performance. It was the best performance I've seen out of him. So the Nick Ring versus Court McGee fight, I didn't think it was on the preliminary card. It was probably the biggest stinker of them all, to be honest with you. It was an okay fight, a bit of a controversial decision.
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Are you having a hard time hearing me, or are you having a hard time hearing?
Yeah, you, but I think it's because of the background noise. Justin?
I thought Erica was breaking up a little bit, but I can hear her fine now.
Okay, then it wasn't Justin. I'll blame you anyway.
Nick Ring, he's just not. Neither Nick Ring or Court McGee are UFC material. Based off of that fight, I just don't think that they have any hopes or aspirations of really getting much past where they are right now in their careers. They tried to build a storyline around this matchup, that Nick Ring was the one that beat Court McGee on The Ultimate Fighter, and then Ring was injured, and McGee was his who won a fight to take his place. And then, I don't know, it was not a very compelling fight. Some people thought that Court McGee won. Dana White stated in the post-fight presser that he thought Court McGee won. I kind of had Nick Ring winning the first two rounds. I thought McGee definitely won the third round, but I had Nick Ring slightly edging him out in the first two rounds. He was really landing that straight left was just brutal for Court McGee in those first two rounds. So I don't know. Whatever. It was just not that great of a fight. If I had to tell you what fight to watch on this entire card, the UFC 149 as a whole, if I had to say one fight that you had to watch, and this is going to probably sound a little funny, I would say the Anton Kuvanin and Mitch Clark fight would be the fight that you should watch, because it was just an absolutely amazing fight the entire time. All three rounds were just really stellar. The main card was such a stinker. Who would have thought Matt Riddle would deliver the most exciting fight on the card? And it wasn't exciting.
And the press conference.
And the press conference. Really trying to get a fight. Okay. And hopefully Matthew Riddle never gets wind of this, but he really looked like an ugly lesbian up there. It was really kind of disturbing. With his really big, super red lips and the long hair. It was really disturbing. I don't know. It was a little creepy for me. But Matthew Riddle having a finish, first off, having an amazing finish. I thought it was a great finish for him. I love that the thought of that technique, the standing arm triangle, and then the trip down to side control and just finishing it off as a regular arm triangle choke. Really, just a great submission for Riddle. He had some bright moments in that fight, but he's asking for a fight with Dan Hardy. Dana White wants to make the fight. Dan Hardy, of course, is facing Amir Sadallah next, and I honestly think that he's going to win that fight as well. But I think Matthew Riddle is a step back for Dan Hardy, to be honest with you, if he beats Amir Sadallah. So I don't know.
That was Hardy's reaction.
Say what?
That was Dan Hardy's
was
reaction.
it? Yeah, I mean, and I don't blame the guy.
I don't blame him either.
I don't
blame Riddle.
I disagree. I don't know if Dan Hardy's really in a position to say that person isn't good enough if he's like 1-4, 1-5 in his last how many fights. Like, I mean, that guy's lucky he has a job. If someone calls him out and gives them a compelling matchup, or gives them some sort of storyline or way to hype the fight, then by all means he should jump all over it. Just because he fought for a title doesn't mean that he was necessarily the most deserving person. I think he was, that was a gift of circumstance right there because there was just nobody left.
I don't know. See, Justin, I don't know if I can agree with that. At this point, a fight like that, a fight where it has a story like that, is used to build fighters as personalities for fans. Dan Hardy doesn't need that. He just doesn't need that. Win or lose, he doesn't need that. People will watch him anyway. He's already got the fan base. People know who he is, and they'll watch him. The problem I have is, I said, if he beats Amir Sadallah. So that's it. If he beats Amir Sadallah, I think he's trying to string together wins to get back in the title contention. And beating Amir Sadallah and then going back and fighting Matthew Riddle is a step back from Amir Sadallah. I would put Matthew Riddle below Amir Sadallah in the hierarchy of things. So if he beats Amir Sadallah, then it's a step back. If he loses to Amir Sadallah, then I think the Matthew Riddle fight would make sense. But again, the UFC rarely ever makes matchups losers against winners. They might in this case because of the storyline, but Matthew Riddle is never going to be a contender. I don't know. I just don't think it's a. I don't know. They need to put him up. If they want to put him up against a British kid, there are plenty of other people out there that I think they can match Matthew Riddle up with that are on his level. But I don't think Dan Hardy is it. I think he's picking a fight with a much bigger dog than him, and Riddle does have great wrestling, and he might be able to completely wrestle Dan Hardy to a decision win. That's very, very possible. But if he pulls some of the crap he pulled in this Chris Clements fight where he lets him back up to stand and trade with him, he's going to sleep against Dan Hardy. So, I don't know. The James Head Brian Ebersol fight that I thought was going to be really exciting was awful. I don't know. I mean, it was so bad. The Czech Congo Sean Jordan fight was abysmal. I'm using the word abysmal for that fight. Can I get an abysmal for that fight?
Absolutely. You're coming in and out again, though.
Who is?
You, Erica.
Now
you're better.
Yeah, now you're better.
Yeah, I can't tell you why that would be. Because all I can hear is Justin going in and out.
That's what she said.
Yeah. I'm going like 70. If you guys want me to get off the call, I can do that.
You're going 70?
Yeah.
Why are you going 70? You need to slow down.
The speed limit's 65, and I would be going faster if this person wasn't going so slow in front of me.
Oh, you're one of those drivers.
Yeah, he is.
Holy shit.
I don't like you. You scare me.
They fucked this whole area up.
David's just scared to drive anyway.
I drive like an old woman. I admit it.
I mean, I certainly do. I tend to scare people when I drive, but I generally don't go above 70 at all, so it's scary. That's too fast for me.
Being on 95 when there's so many cars and people are just trying to fly ahead of you to get nowhere really seems irrational.
I think you're an unsafe. I think you're an unsafe driver.
You're last.
You're an unsafe driver, Justin Cohey. I'm never riding with you.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm doing 70. I'd be doing more person than I'm tailgating right now. Would be going quicker.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. All right. Well, MMA on the reg is saying that my mic is fine. That it's Justin's noise that he's hearing.
Justin.
Just
What the fuck, Justin?
It's such a problem child. It's like that movie with the problem.
Problem Child movie. I remember that movie. I think it had a sequel.
Yes, it did. And I also believe it starred John Ritter, didn't it? John Ritter was the father.
It did.
I don't know why we're talking about that. Maybe
It wasn't terrible.
That little redheaded kid scared the crap out of me.
I remember it not being awful. Like, it wasn't,
He scared me. No, that's like Damien right there. That's what happens when somebody adopts Damien right there. Okay, let's talk about Tim Boesch and Hector Lombard. Did you guys have Boesch winning that fight?
I think I had Lombard winning, but I actually had both losing.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I'll accept that. That's a more than acceptable response. What about you, Kohi? Did you have Boesch or Lombard winning that fight?
Well, I mean, when we were doing our picks, I picked Lombard, but I still haven't seen the fight, and based on what everyone was saying, I didn't think I warranted me watching it.
I really think Lombard. I mean, if you didn't see the fight, Lombard.
You're lucky.
He didn't do anything, and he was flat-footed. He was standing right in front of Tim Boesch. Boesch was being very cautious, which was smart. I mean, you got to be smart against a guy like Hector Lombard. I think everybody was expecting Lombard to like.
Neither guy did anything. I mean, that's just
no. Boesch's strategy was I thought it was the right strategy for the fight. It just so happened that Hector Lombard wasn't doing what he trained for. I guess they expected Hector Lombard. What all the clips they were showing is Hector Lombard exploding and throwing a barrage of punches and really going for it and trying for some judo throws. And he really didn't do any of that. I think he got one or two. I think he got one takedown. Wasn't able to hold it. And for the most part, he just stood there and kind of fainted. That was his whole fight. He just kind of fainted the whole time. He would jerk one way, he would jerk the other way, but he didn't throw anything. It was awful. It was just a really bad fight. I thought both
guys are now out of contention for the next title shot at Anderson. That's
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think with an impressive performance, maybe Boesch would have been closer to it, but I still didn't think that he should have been a title contender at that point, and he still has a lot to prove. I'd like to see him face an actual top 10 middleweight instead of a packaged one like Hector Lombard. We already talked about the Faber-Barao fight. Just not as good as I think everybody was really hoping it would be. Uriah
Faber got injured though in the second round, was it?
Yeah, he broke his
rib. Broken rib.
He had a broken rib, and Boesch broke his foot in the second round of his fight with Lombard. So,
and actually, I think Congo came into the fight injured.
You know what? I'm not buying it. You know why? Because he's a garbage fighter who always fights like that, and he must be injured in every fight that he does because. That's what I expected. I was hoping for better, but that's what I was expecting, and we got exactly what we expected. Just an awful performance from Czech Congo. Not willing to throw any punches. I think one of the rounds he only had 9 punches thrown or something like that. It was ridiculous. Really? Sean Jordan is definitely to blame for this as well. I don't know what Greg Jackson... I know Greg Jackson kept trying to tell him he wanted to see him actually throw his hands. He was scared to throw his hands. When you step up to the big leagues like that, when they're putting you up against a guy like Czech Congo, who's a veteran of the sport, you need to just go out there and just leave it all out in the cage, man. Don't be overly cautious. It's not going to help you at all. It doesn't make you a better fighter at all at that point. And it was just a garbage performance from both guys. I actually want both of them to be cut. I know Czech Congo won. I want Congo to be cut. I want to see that mofo working at Popeye's Chicken because that's probably the best job that he can for him at this point. Because fighter is not one of them. Such garbage. It was such an awful fight. I was pissed. I'm still pissed. I'm sorry. I'm calming down. I'm calming down over here. I promise. But that was just awful.
You're up here. We need you down here.
I'm sorry. I'm like at a 9. You need me at like a 4. I'm coming back down. So what do you do with Congo, Kohi? I mean, if you haven't read Kohi's Corner, which is Justin Kohi's wrap up of every fight card. You can check it out on our Tumblr page, which is fightfansradio.tumblr.com. And as a matter of fact, I will tweet that right now. Justin always has some really, really, really good picks. I think you have a proud moment for you right now, though, Kohi, and I'm going to let you go ahead and talk about the "I told you so" that you 100% deserve right now, based on a recent fight matchup.
Yeah, I don't know if this was one of the Kohi corner I did for UFC 146. I don't know if it actually got posted because we were still working on the Tumblr and we thought maybe it would end up on the website because we thought the website might go up a little quicker. But anyway, I wrote it, and we actually talked about it on the show as well. Is that people were thinking, okay, what's next for Frank Mir? And I said, why not move him over to Strikeforce for one fight? Because Daniel Cormier is looking, he's an opponent, and they don't have any more heavyweights. There's not really any legitimate heavyweight outside of the UFC Strikeforce, partnership that you could really bring in and be a legitimate opponent for Daniel Cormier. Mir has done everything he's done in the sport. He can do in the UFC. He's clearly not going to win a title again. I said go ahead and put him against DC. What do you know? It gets announced. Joe Silva sneaking in my bedroom.
Yeah.
You're sleeping with Joe Silva in your bedroom? What's going on, Kohi?
I mean, I think Kohi might actually have some sort of lawsuit on his hands here. If
Did he just come out on our show?
Don't let him talk to you like that, Kohi.
No, man, it's from last week when you were like, "Oh yeah, Joe Silva sneaks into your window and takes your notebook and all that kind of shit."
He does. He absolutely does.
He goes to be thinking about it.
So let me ask you about this matchup, Daniel Cormier versus Mir, and I agree with the sentiment
with David? With David. You agree with David, right?
I guess. What is David's thought on the fight?
David says Frank Mir's going to get massacred.
Yes.
And the real question here is whether it gets out of the first round, and I don't think it will. But Frank Mir has no shot.
No chance.
I don't even give him a puncher's chance here.
No
He's gonna
chance
get killed.
at all. You've got no chance. Sorry.
Which doesn't mean they shouldn't have made the fight, but I think it's a real bad one for Frank Mir.
Yeah. So, and this is the other side of the coin. When you're a fighter, you need I think you need two different the most important prongs of becoming a marketable fan favorite is you need to have fights where there's a storyline and it gets you more fans, and then you need a fight that is a challenge for you as a fighter that legitimizes your style, your technique, and you overall as a fighter. The Josh Barnett fight was the fight that made Daniel Cormier a real fighter, a legit fighter. You can't argue that, whether you like Josh Barnett or not. Josh Barnett is still a hell of an opponent, and he got destroyed in there. He's a vet and was destroyed by a guy who was he 10-0 going into that fight, 9-0, something like that, and he got destroyed by this kid. Frank Mir is the fight that Daniel Cormier needs to make him a fan favorite. He needs a fight with a guy like Frank Mir who's going to more than likely talk down about him. He's going to threaten to submit him. He's going to say that his boxing is better. He's going to say his footwork is better. He's going to say that.
When you say talk down to him, do you mean that Frank Mir's a racist?
Well, no. I think just Frank Mir thinks that he's better than everybody.
I'm kidding.
I don't want to say Frank Mir's a racist. Frank Mir's a racist. But I do. I think that this is a good fight for Cormier. I think David said the same thing basically. And do you agree though that this is the fight to build Daniel Cormier and get his name out there to fans?
Is that for me or for Justin?
Either one of you.
Frank Mir has a name, so I think there's value there. I just don't think it's a competitive fight.
No, it's not a competitive fight, but we don't need it to be a competitive fight at this point.
You don't. No. It accomplishes the goal. It's on Strikeforce though, so that's an interesting question. Is how many people are actually going to see it? maybe more people than a Fuel event, but still Showtime. Pay cable.
Yeah, I got rid of my Showtime, so I'll probably be going over somebody else's house to watch it if I watch it at all.
So is it comparable to like Chris Weidman's victory over Munoz? Okay. There's a tree that falls in the forest, no one's around. Does it sound?
I mean, I guess the question is Frank Mir a draw? Is he a legitimate draw? And I think he is. I think he's got a lot of fans, and I think he's a draw. People, for whatever reason, really like him. I think he is a cocky asshole with limited skills. But
you're gonna get to see him get knocked out again.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, it's it's whatever. It really is whatever. I think it will benefit. I don't think it'll benefit Strikeforce as much because Frank. There's no way Frank Mir agreed to do more than one fight in Strikeforce. Oh, but Frank Mir losing in Strikeforce, what does that do to his stock? I mean, did he just really take a bullet for the UFC company? Did he just really take a bullet for them?
He probably survives because he's doing them a favor. Not that they get rid of him, but even if he loses, probably still gets a decent fight back in UFC.
Right.
Just because he's
willing
to do this. A lot of guys wouldn't be. I don't know what they're paying him to do it.
He's essentially the heavyweight Rich Franklin right at this point. I mean, he's got enough of a name, and both old and new fans will recognize who he is. You can hype up his skills and his accomplishments, former champion, but he's willing to take this sort of risk. And I don't see the UFC ever really cutting Rich Franklin. I don't see them cutting Frank Mir either. I think they're pretty much in the same boat now.
So MMA on the Reg is calling your Frank Mir to Strikeforce top 3 MMA prediction for 2012. I'm going to have to agree with him there. I'm backing him up on that 100%. That was something that...
A good one.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, there are certain fights that you can call that it almost makes sense for those fights to happen. You kind of know through process of elimination, through the ladder, through people that they've defeated, where people will end up. But to predict that Frank Mir was going to be making the move to Strikeforce, and this was really, if you said UFC 126, we probably thought you were crazy. We probably even said you were crazy when you said that. So I apologize for what I may or may not have said. But good call on you, Justin. That seriously is an awesome call. All right. So we got, Frank Mir moving to Strikeforce for this fight, and there seems to be a lot of shuffling as usual going on with fights. We lost. Actually, as a matter of fact, I'm going to go down to what David wanted to talk about. Let's talk about the Shogun's fight. August 4th, we have UFC on Fox 4. Let's talk about that instead. So apparently Dana White is quote-unquote making it a much more interesting fight by saying Shogun may end up with another title shot should he beat Vera. Why? I mean, dude.
I honestly have no idea.
I mean, the only thing that would make that remotely interesting is if through some miracle of life, Dan Henderson is able to beat John Jones, becomes the champion, and then Shogun beats Vera, and then we get Dan Henderson versus Shogun 2. That is the only scenario that even remotely seems interesting, and I'm not even sure how interesting that is to casual fans.
I thought the indication was that the show itself is going to decide who gets the next shot, not necessarily Shogun, but Brandon, Machida, or even, what's his name? Masturbator.
Oh, God. Okay, first off, this is the scary part. And again, I mentioned this earlier about the 205 division. This is the scary part. John Jones has beaten all of these people already. He has beaten each and every one of them. He's beaten Shogun. He's beaten Vera. He's beaten Bader. And he's beaten Machida. And all of them ended badly for these guys. These were not competitive
The only other
fights.
guy, though, is Gustafsson, right?
The only other guy is Gustafsson, yeah. Or if they try and push Ryan Gimo down, through as fast as possible.
Oh, come on.
But that, I mean,
Has he got a 7-second knockout?
I mean, but David, you can't say that is not something that that's something that the UFC hasn't done before. It's ridiculous. It's an absolute ridiculous notion that they would do that.
They really don't have many options.
They don't.
They probably should try to make a super fight, even though I'm not sure that's always a good idea. But that would at least make a whole lot of money.
Yeah. I
but
agree
like, you also got Glover Teixeira, going to be fighting Rampage fairly soon. I think if Glover Teixeira looks good in that fight and even finishes Rampage, I think he's up there as well.
Okay, I'll give you that. Maybe
I could go for that.
Yeah, I mean, he's
more than rematches at this point.
I mean, but that is a hell of a leap to go from Kyle Kingsbury to retiring, fading Rampage Jackson to a title shot. But
still a Rampage, though.
It is still Rampage, but
I'd like to see, like, if Glover Teixeira beats Rampage, I'd like to see a title eliminator between Teixeira and Gustafsson.
The UFC would never do that because it's so thin at 205. I mean, they'd be essentially eliminating one of their contenders.
Then you lose a guy that could be challenging.
They would never do that.
Should keep those guys separate. I would.
They did that with Jones and Bader. I mean, Bader was on a nice little streak before he faced Jones. And
that was before it was before they recognized that you were going to have a guy dominate the division the way Jones had.
Yeah, and remember, Jones got his title shot because Rashad Evans got injured.
That's true.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have a point, but at the same time, when it's so thin, do you really put the two guys that you may be able to squeeze two pay-per-views out of against each other? And I don't see the UFC doing that, considering that they're trying to put a pay-per-view on every weekend now, it seems. So it's really just kind of...
I got shit to do, UFC. Stop doing that.
Say what?
I said
you have shit to do.
I got shit to do.
Yeah, okay. Shit to do. Whatever. F you, man. This is just a really, I don't know. I have to say, I've been a fan of MMA for a very long time. I've been a fan of the UFC for a very long time, and their recent moves are making me less of a UFC fan, not less of an MMA fan, but less of a UFC fan. Dana White at the one UFC 149 post fight press conference said something along the lines of, I think it was Karen Bryant who asked him about the oversaturation of fights, and Dana White made a comment where he says, the day that I let the people on the internet tell me what to do, it's the day we're in trouble. The people on the internet aren't just faceless bots on the other end. These are fans, and the fans are the people that got you to where you are.
It's hilarious because he's made entire fights based on a few freaking tweets.
Yeah.
So what the fuck's he talking about?
It's classic Dana White rhetoric, and it's finally
it's belied by his own actions over the last several years. He's booked fights based on internet reaction.
Yeah, he absolutely has. And for him to turn around and then hurl insults at those same people.
Hell when I do that.
It is, I don't know. He's losing fans himself, especially since he's made himself such a figurehead that he actually has fans. I think that's retarded. But he's losing fans. I think the UFC is losing. It's losing something with fans. I'm not sure what it is. What would you? How would you?
I think it's losing the.
Not
the credibility, but just the feeling that you have to watch every show.
Yeah.
And you don't want to miss. If you miss something, you might really miss something.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder. I mean, having one pay-per-view a month, I would mind at all. I would actually probably prefer. I'm sure a lot of people's pocketbooks would prefer that. Having one pay-per-view a month, having do an FX card every 8 weeks instead of every 2.5 days. Do a fuel card never.
Never.
Do a fuel card.
No more fuel cards.
You know what they should do instead of fuel cards or airing cards on fuel? They should just air like almost a strike, because I mean the fuel cards have essentially become like the Strike Force Challenger shows. Why not use those completely on Facebook?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, I don't know how much if the cost is more for them to do it on. I know it's expensive for them to broadcast the stuff on Facebook, but I'm wondering if the cost is more or less than them going on. I mean, I would think that I don't know. That's a good question. Why not just do it on Facebook? Just have it, online fights, and have it be, new guys that are making their debuts in the UFC, because we don't need to see those effers mucking up our pay-per-view cards. I don't know. I really am getting a little, I don't know, disenchanted. It was a bit of a strong word.
Speaking of lame events and that sort of thing, what do you guys think of the new headliner for the FX on or UFC on FX5 card that got moved to Minneapolis?
As a hardcore fan, I think it's an intriguing fight. Travis Browne versus Antonio Bigfoot Silva. I think that's a really intriguing fight. Again, it's a little bit weird. We rarely ever see guys coming off of loss, especially as brutal as Bigfoot's was against Velasquez. But I think Browne is probably more along his wavelength. Would you agree, David, that he's more on his wavelength? And I think it's a competitive fight. I think it'll be a competitive fight. I still have Browne probably winning the fight. But I think it'd be a more competitive fight for Bigfoot, whereas Velasquez was just watching a high schooler beat up a preschooler.
I totally agree with your assessment there. I don't really care for the fight that much. But I don't really care for the other one. I'm not compelled. This is one of the shows right here where it's skippable, really.
Yeah,
it's not even a fuel card, and it's skippable.
Do we know who else is UFC?
Yeah, but I'm only basing that on main event. Maybe they have some other fights on there that I'll actually.
I think that there's only one other fight announced thus far for the event, and it's Diego Nunez versus Bart Palhares.
Yep, no, that's not the case.
I really like Bart Palhares. How do you say it? Bart Palhares.
However you say it.
Bartimus.
Palhares. God, I've said it so many times, it sounds wrong to me. Palhares.
Yeah, Bartimus.
Some fucking name.
Yeah, that is a hell of a name. That is a mouthful right there. That's what she said. And sorry, I had to do my own. That's what she said.
No need to apologize.
And it's taking place in Minneapolis. I think they'll probably get a fairly decent, live gate there. But you're right. It's the UFC is just making some really shit cards and expecting us to tune in to watch them, and then when we don't, they come up with excuses for why people didn't. That has absolutely nothing to do with the shitty matchmaking. And not that the matchmaking is shitty. I can't say that, because Joe Silva surprises us more often than not when we're like, man, this is an awful matchup, and then it ends up being an amazing fight. So, but
I don't know. I think I don't know if I would match up someone on the rise as much as Browne seems to be at the moment versus someone who just got the shit kicked out of him the way Bigfoot did. But at the same time,
it's a better fight. It's a better fight than Rothwell, though. Maybe not in terms of.
I do agree with that.
Yeah, it's just overall.
But at the same time, you look back on some of the older fight cards. I mean, it was one was headlined by Josh Berkman versus Mike Swick. So, I mean, it's not like these street cards have always been, pay-per-view quality. There may be like one or two pay-per-view quality fights on there, and then the rest is just kind of fodder. So I think a main event like this makes sense. I mean, every now and then you'd get the fight like Kenny Florian versus Takanori Okami, which also had Roy Nelson versus Stephen Struve on there. I thought that was like fairly ridiculous for a free fight card. So I think when you put like two guys that are arguably top 10 in the heavyweight division and put it on a free card, I'd say that's a pretty good deal for the fans.
Right. And speaking of the kind of backing up here for a minute, MMA on the reg. I thought that this was really interesting. He said the UFC could sign Gegard Mousasi at 205. And I think that would be an interesting addition to the 205-pound division. I think it would. I don't think he would beat John Jones, but I think it would be an interesting story. We could have some really great matchups, and figure out a way to get him up there. But he also makes a good point. He says he may pull a Lombard, and that is, we've seen him do it before. We've seen Gegard Mousasi be something else, and that's a good point.
I'd like to see Gegard Mousasi fight James Tahuna.
Oh wow, that'd be a nice fight. I like that fight. Wow. Huh. I'm thinking about that. I like that. You're too good at this, Justin. Maybe we just need to start our own fight promotion. Maybe that's what needs to happen.
Yeah, we just need to find all these UFC fighters.
We just need to find a sucker with a lot of money. What we should do is have Gracie. We should have Gracie hook up with like some really, 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 really
That's
old.
That's what I was going to say. Like, we work at an estate planning firm, and she would just marry one of our old clients.
What do you think? I'm sure Gracie is going to listen to this and tell us no, but I think we can convince her to do it. Even if maybe if we give her like a really big percentage cut, but it has to be. We have to talk about his net worth, how much he'll get once he dies. If he has kids, it'll probably get split up between them.
Like a storyline from Mad Men. She's Joan.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like Kohi's just a little too good at this to be stuck on our show with 6 listeners. So we'll work it out, Justin. But once you get to that point, you can't forget where you came from. I'm saying.
Fair enough.
I'm being serious here. Don't make me come looking for you. All right, so let's talk real quick. Let's just talk about the Belfort Belcher fight real quick. And how are you guys feeling about that matchup? I think it's a really good matchup.
Love it.
Go ahead, Kohi. Did we
what?
Lose? Go ahead, Kohi.
I said I love it.
Oh, well, it loves you too.
Why did you marry him?
I think it's an amazing matchup. I think
Belcher with a win could get a title shot.
Yes. I think Belcher did a really good job of talking his way into this fight, because I think it was between Belcher and who else was calling out? Belfort was calling out Weidman, and Weidman was like, "Look, bruh, I'm waiting for my title shot." Which
that made me like Weidman so much more than I already did. I really like the guy, but for him to just be like, "Nah, Belfort, I'm waiting for my title shot. You had yours." I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I kind of like that too. And there's a lot of debate on whether Weidman is actually ready for a title shot. What do you think, guys? Do you think that he's ready for a title shot? I know we talked about this after the fight, but considering the fallout from 149 between Bosch and Lombard, and pretty much both of those guys being nowhere near a title shot right now after that performance, is Chris Weidman the next person for Anderson Silva at 185?
I think it depends on the result of the Bisping Brian Stan fight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bisping.
That's it right there.
Yeah, Bisping beats Stan impressively, then Bisping is the more marketable guy and will probably get the fight. But as for is Chris Weidman ready for Anderson Silva, skill-wise, I think he is.
Yeah, I mean, I know people, they keep talking about Anderson Silva, and I do agree. Right now, Anderson Silva is the best fighter on the planet, and that includes MMA, boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, capoeira, taekwondo, karate, Krav Maga, backyard brawling. I don't care what you want to call it. I think Anderson Silva beats them all. But I think stylistically, Chris Weidman brings some really interesting things to the table. He's young. He's hungry. He's a lot more diverse fighter than Chael Sonnen was, but he has really great wrestling. And I think he'll be able to find a way to get the takedown. And I think we're in for actually seeing an interesting grappling match with Anderson Silva for once. I mean, we generally don't get interesting grappling matches with him, and I think we might end up with one with him and Chris Weidman. But you're right. Michael Bisping is the more marketable fight. Do you think he finishes Stan, though? Do you think that's a possibility? I think you'd have to finish Stan.
Now, Erica.
Say what?
So you're kind of fading out.
Am I fading out or are you fading out?
You're fading out.
Are you sure?
You sound better now.
Yeah, you weren't really fading out too badly, but I heard a little fade.
So did you, so now you made me fucking lose my train of thought. Never mind. Yeah, so, anything else you guys want to cover before we go ahead and close out the show? Because I'm ready to call it quits today.
Was there anything else?
I mean, there was a lot of, like, little tidbitty things, but I'm just not
The only other fight that I thought was, that was pretty interesting that got announced, I don't know if we talked about it last week, was, Jake Ellenberger versus Josh Koscheck being the co-main event for Jazz Nintendo.
Oh, I hope Ellenberger just destroys Koscheck. I really, really do.
Did we mention Gilbert Melendez's fight against Pat Healy?
Pat Healy, that is a crime against humanity right there. Although, you know what, I don't think that, Melendez didn't look that great in his last fight against Thompson. I still stand by my, maybe it should have been a draw or maybe Thompson should have got the win. But I don't know. Pat Healy, really? Is that where we're at now, Strikeforce?
That is where we are.
Well, that's all we got, really.
It is all we've got right now. And
it's a nice move. That's all we've got.
I don't know. I'm actually Pat Healy. Let's look him up. What's his winning streak like right now? Pat Healy, fighter. Hold on a second. I got it. He's on a 5-fight win streak. Includes Lyle Beerbaum, Eric Wisely, Maximo Blanco,
really,
Carlos Fodor, Mizuto Hirota.
That level of competition, fuck. Give him a title shot against the winner of Ben Henderson and Frankie.
Oh my gosh.
Jesus Christ. Look who he's beaten.
Only 2 of those were finishes. Blanco, he finished with a rear naked choke. And
that was a good fight, though.
Say what?
That was a good fight. His fight against Maximo Blanco.
Yeah. Yeah, and then his fight against Carlos Fodor. Is that how you say it? Fodor? Whatever.
Yeah, Carlos Fodor.
Let's call him Fedor, too.
We're going to call him Fedor, too.
Or as I call Fedor, Fredo.
What you call him is retired. Overrated. Is that another one?
I call him overrated. I call him Fredo. I know it was you, Fredo.
Oh.
You broke my heart.
You broke my heart, Fredo.
I
don't want it that way, Michael.
What else is there to? I mean, there really isn't. The what? What'd you say?
The Godfather movies.
Oh, you're gonna hate me because I've only seen the first one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Everybody tells me I should see the second one and that I can skip the third one.
Yeah, I don't think you should skip the third one. The third one, I mean, it's a trilogy. The third one's a good movie. The first 2 are just classic. And the third's quite different. The third is focused on repentance, or Michael's attempt at repentance.
All right, I'll watch them. Damn it.
You should.
Which reminds me, afterwards I need to talk to you about some pop culture stuff. So don't let me forget, because I will likely forget as soon as we get off air here. I think that's it. I really think that's all that we should really talk about. Palhares and Camozzi were injured, and now we have Buddy Roberts versus Okami. I think the UFC at that point is actually trying to scare away fans. I think that's an attempt at losing fans right there. But Buddy Roberts versus Okami, really? First off, his name is Buddy Roberts. He sounds like a 1960s folk singer.
He sounds like a fabulous freebird. Michael Hayes and Terry Gordy. And Buddy Roberts.
The
fabulous freebirds.
And, I don't know.
Like Dennis is like best friend in high school or something.
Yes. Me and Buddy Roberts are going to go to the malt shop and...
That's my Buddy Roberts.
So awful. Oh, this is, nothing against Buddy Roberts as a person. I'm sure he's a wonderful, upstanding human being, which I don't know.
He was the best freebird of the bunch, perhaps.
Let me see, Buddy Roberts. I do remember he was supposed to fight on the first field card, but got injured while warming up.
Was he the one?
Yeah. Oh wow! I accidentally looked up Buddy Roberts, the pro wrestler, and not the fighter.
I'm telling you, the fabulous Freebird. He is Buddy Roberts. If your name is Buddy Roberts, you should change your name because everyone's gonna find the Freebird.
Should we write him an email? Dear Buddy Roberts.
Just go by Bud and then make his nickname White, and then he'll have sponsors forever.
He beat that's that last name, that Portuguese last name I can never pronounce.
I think he should change his first name to Robert.
Robert Roberts?
Yes.
Yes. I like it. I love it when people do that to their kids.
It's like a punishment.
It is. It's like they hated them.
It's a punishment in advance.
They hated them from the gestation period. Like, I hate you. You know what I'm going to do?
You were an accident.
No offense to anybody out there whose first and last name are remarkably similar. But your parents probably did hate you. Just want to let you know that. In case you didn't know that. It's likely they hated you. And they might still hate you a little bit. Especially if they call you by your first and last name constantly, just to remind you about how crappy your name is.
Justin had changed his name.
Was it Justin Justin's?
It was Justin Justinian.
Justin Justinian.
Yeah, and David used to be Hungry Like.
Hungry Like.
Hungry like Wolf? That doesn't make sense.
Oh, go fuck yourself.
Hungry like a wolf.
No, wolf. Hungry like the wolf.
Hungry like the wolf. All right, guys. I think this is it for me today. I can't think of anything else that we should really be covering.
Justin watched Raw's 1000th episode.
Did you, Justin?
What's that?
Did you watch the 1000th episode of Raw?
I tried and got about 15 minutes in and just had to change the channel.
You know, every once in a while there is some really, like when you watch pro wrestling, it's watching a really highly choreographed routine. And sometimes they are amazing, they are seamless, and they just look really impressive. More times than not, they're a little herky jerky and whatnot. But the really good ones, they're worth seeing. There's actually a video on the YouTubers. It's let me see if I can actually find it and tweet it. It's Boss Rudin basically making fun of pro wrestling, but they have a bunch of real pro wrestling guys on there that are absolutely amazing in the choreography that they're doing. And then Boss Rudin comes in, of course, and basically chops them in the throat. But it's a really great video, and I'm going to find it and send it out. Pro wrestling has its moments. You just got to find what you're looking for. It's like Chipotle. First time I went to Chipotle, I didn't like it because I didn't know what I was really looking for. But once I found the right combination, it's amazing.
Problem is WWE mostly sucks these days. So whatever you're looking for, you probably won't find unless you're about 8 years old.
I mean, that was the thing. Like, I figured if I was going to watch any episode of Raw, it would be the 1000th episode. So there would be, people I recognized or maybe references to old storylines I might remember, but I don't know. I watched I I missed the first part where DX was out there, and then I saw the 6-man tag match with two people that I recognized, and I just really wasn't impressed with it. So and then I watched some of the backstage stuff, and I was just like, screw it. There's the best surprise on Fuel right now. I'll watch that instead.
All right, fair enough.
It did really great ratings.
What?
Raw.
Did it really?
Its best ratings in years since the Donald Trump episode years ago.
Good God.
Yeah, it did really, really monster ratings.
Good God. Good job, guys. Letting pro wrestling catch back up. Good job. Good job, UFC.
That wasn't the point of this conversation.
Sorry, I'm still a little angry. I'm a little bitter over here. All right, guys. Anything else? Any closing statements before I go ahead and close up shop?
I got nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing here.
We'd like to, of course,
At least there's no UFC this week.
Yeah, there's no UFC this week. The next UFC card will be August 4th, and that is UFC on Fox 4. All 13 people who will be watching it. I will be one of them. But we'd like to thank Finishers Fantasy Fight League. They sponsor our predictions portion of the show. Please check them out on the web at fantasymmaworld.com. Their season 3 is closed for new entrants, but you can sign up for season 4. Each season is 3 months long. You can also check out they have a new game on there that is a bracket game that you can play. I think it's called Bracket Brawl. I think this is actually what they decided to call it, Bracket Brawl. So check it out on their website, fantasymmaworld.com. We'd also like to thank me, because I'm awesome. I'd like to thank David Wolf. He's kind of awesome. I'd like to thank Justin Cohee's phone for kind of fucking up the whole show. And we'd like to thank everybody who's listening right now. Be sure to check us out on the web. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/FightFansRadio. Check out our YouTube page, youtube.com/FightFansRadio. All of our episodes are on iTunes. They are also available on Stitcher Radio. We will soon be broadcasting live through Stitcher Radio, so stay tuned for that. That is happening a lot sooner than later. And we will chat with you guys next Friday, same time. Hopefully I feel a little bit better and we can do a longer show. It'll be Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time here on Fight Fans Radio. So peace, people.